What's ho? Hello everyone. I'm the Herdmeister, Mark Earls, and I'd like to be able to tell you that when I was 10, my grandfather, who was on his deathbed, turned to me and told me something that has changed the way that I live, and I'm sorry to say it wasn't like that at all. I'd like to be able to tell you that some kindly teacher took me aside and put his arm around me and helped me stop running around and being a wild and crazy thing, and gave me some really practical advice that's changed things. I'd like to be able to tell you that it was my dad who said, you know what, son, be true to yourself. And all of that is bollocks, really, because I spent most of my teenage years and formative years, and most of my 20s as well, being mostly interested in this kind of stuff. And the people I took advice from, erroneously as it turns out, are people who wrote lyrics to this kind of stuff, you know. But the one piece of advice that I have taken and found incredibly useful comes from someone I never met, and it comes from someone who was giving his last interview before he died, and he was a sort of cult hero of mine when I was that sex and drugs and rock and roll obsessed teenager. So Kurt Vonnegut. Anyone read any of his novels at all? Kurt Vonnegut? Hands up? A few. Awesome fella, and apart from anything else, a complete skeptic about the world, and particularly about anyone in power and what they tell you. So he's genuinely very useful in the modern era. But he was an interesting guy because he wasn't a writer straight off the bat. He was an anthropologist, and he's part of a really interesting movement of people, including Saul Bellow and a bunch of other American novelists who all studied how people and culture interact. Really interesting guy. So anyway, so he's doing his last interview, and you can see why it was his last interview. He was a brilliant smoker, an excellent drinker. And he was asked, do you have, Mr. Vonnegut, do you have any advice for young people today? And because they look up to you so much, particularly in the US and in Northern Europe, and particularly in Germany and Scandinavia. Do you have any advice for young people today? And he put it really simply, join a gang, any gang. Join a gang, any gang. Now, part of this is informed by his anthropological background, recognising that for young people, and for all of us generally, it must be said, is that our lives are lived out best in the company of other people, and we get safety as young people from the world of other people, which is why you might interpret it as being this kind of thing. Go and find people who have cool clothes and whatever, and listen to cool music. Or that. It's another version, I guess, of the same thing. I'm not sure he meant this. And I'm not sure he meant this. Most of you will be, well, for all of you, apart from one or two at the front, will not recognise the significance. This is a hit from the early 70s, Christmas #1 from the early 70s for the Glitter Band and Gary Glitter. Well, no more of that then. Being serious for a moment, this guy is super cool guy who made much of the same argument. This guy called Thomas Kuhn, who's a historian of science and a philosopher of science. And he wrote a great book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And in that book, he used this word for the first time that we've all now found ourselves recycling. Paradigm shift is the phrase. Paradigm shift. He invented that. But his argument was that science didn't work through simple experiment, but it worked through groups of people working on the stuff that other groups of people have been working on and finding stuff useful that other people had done. So he was making an argument in this case that science advances not by individuals having apples fall out of trees or sticking a telescope to their eyes alone and watching stuff change in their observations of the planets, but through people picking up stuff that other people were doing. So it's an argument for the gang. And then this guy's Howard Gardner, and if you want to read anything about creativity from psychological literature, he's the daddy. He's written a number of really brilliant studies, including one where he takes the great creative minds of the 20th century, Freud and Stravinsky and Gandhi and so on, and shows how their creativity was very different from this kind of I'm an artist living in a garret creativity. It's very different from I believe, the archetype that we use in our business of what a creative person looks like and what creativity is practiced by. Absolutely brilliant guy. I mean, for example, he showed that acting as a loner doesn't work. Almost all great creative minds develop a group of people around them to help their ideas spread. So, for example, Freud put together the Freudians. who spent the next 100 years just about arguing with each other about shit and fighting each other and so on. But at least the ideas then got developed. Martha Graham, who invented contemporary dance, took journalists who were writing about ballet and the like and showed them what contemporary dance looked. She actually trained them as critics so that they would know what to value in order there'd be a community of people to discuss stuff. So if you think your work is ever going to get anywhere, if your ideas and your insights into the craft that we do or business or whatever, ever going to get anywhere, you need to find a gang. And here's a very lovely gang. This is some of the creative socials at our first book launch. This is the Future of Advertising launch, is that right?
No.
That was it?
Past, present, future.
Future of Advertising, Past, Present and Future. There we are. Yes, some lovely people there. And that was just before Graham Fink and Flo cut a pile of books in half with a chainsaw, and yeah, it's crazy. And this is me and the bass guitarist in my band. Thank you very much. Join a gang, any gang.